A lot of home studio producers probably assume that recording acoustic guitar with two mics will just automatically sound better because one is more than two, so that just means it sounds better, right? But actually it completely depends on a few different things that I'm going to share with you in this video. I'm going to be showing you some examples so you can hear the differences, and we'll talk about why you would want to use one mic or why you might want to use two mics. And spoiler, 9 out of 10 times I end up recording in mono with just one mic and not stereo. I'm going to explain to you why. So in this video we'll be using the Lewitt LA 140s in this video, both as a pair. I have two of them right here, but I'll also just use one of them for tracking in mono. Now these sound awesome on acoustic guitar, and I especially love the air mode on it. If you're interested, I have a link in the description to my Sweetwater favorites. And this is not a sponsored video. So why is it that I use one mic 9 out of 10 times instead of two? Well, to understand that, we need to actually talk about the purpose of one versus two mics. See, when you record with two microphones, you're going to be recording one mic to each side. In other words, one mic is going to pan to the right and the other will pan to the left automatically in a stereo channel. This is going to give the guitars a nice wide sound, which seems like that would be a good thing, right? Sure, in some cases, but what if you want to have a lot of guitar layers? Well, that's where the problems start when miking in stereo. The more layers of guitar you want, the more problematic tracking in stereo becomes, because it automatically takes up a larger amount of space in the stereo field. And since it's capturing more signal by nature of having two mics instead of one, it's also going to carry a richer sound, which can also be a big problem when you have lots of layers. So when is recording in stereo appropriate? You'll want to record in stereo with two microphones when the acoustic guitar is the primary instrument in a track. So acoustic music, folk music, or maybe even pop that is very acoustic guitar driven. By recording in stereo, you get a wide and rich sound that takes up more space and feels bigger. And there are lots of different techniques to record in stereo, but the one that I'm going to be using gives the widest stereo image. In other words, this technique is going to be the one that makes the guitar sound very wide, as you're going to hear like this. That sounds great, but what happens when you want to have, let's say, two layers of acoustic guitars, each doing their own rhythmic pattern? Well, this is where it falls apart. Let's take a listen to see how this sounds with two guitar parts, both recorded in stereo, doing two rhythmically different patterns. Yeah, so that honestly sounds pretty messy. It doesn't sound like there's a very strong separation between the two guitar parts. And some might just say, well, just pan them. But that literally negates the entire point of recording in stereo altogether. But what happens if we do that exact same pattern with two guitar layers, but instead record in mono or with a single mic, and then we'll just pan each to a separate side to give a nice and distinct separation? Let's listen. And as predicted, it sounds a lot more clean. It sounds a lot more distinct. You can really clearly tell that there are two unique parts happening. Let's just listen to these two and switch between them to hear the differences. I think you get the point. When you're recording in stereo, you're automatically making a decision to make that guitar part the focal point because it's going to be richer and bigger and wider. And as a result, you cannot get away with quite as many guitar layers without compromising the sound. But by recording in mono, we can do a whole lot of stuff that we just cannot get away with when tracking in stereo. And this is because it's not going to take up as much frequency spectrum. We can pan, we can actually create a lot of separation between the parts. So if you're working on bigger stuff like I am, then you're probably going to want to record in mono in most cases and not stereo. But like anything, it's the context that matters the most, and you can do a blend. So for example, we can have a primary guitar recorded in stereo and then two other layers recorded in mono that are panned, and that can work. But the big kicker is that you must arrange those parts to have distinction. In other words, you can't just double up stuff and call it a day. You'll want to try using different voicings or use a capo or have very distinct parts. Maybe the two mono parts are just using a palm muted articulation while the main part is strumming, or vice versa. Basically, try try to get creative so they're not doing the same thing. They need distinct separation. Basically, you need to make sure that they are not too similar, or else what's the point apart from just throwing more stuff in, which makes mixing it a nightmare. Now, what if you want that wide guitar sound, but you don't have two microphones? Are you just out of luck? Nope. One of my favorite recording techniques is to double track and pan. And this is simulating tracking in stereo, but it's more unique because it's double tracking, which means instead of having two identical performances captured in one take, you get two unique performances designed to match each other, but it's impossible to make them 100% identical, which actually can add to the width of the sound. So again, here's that guitar with two mics in stereo that we started with. But what if we do that same part recorded in mono, double track them and pan them, and it sounds like this. See, it's a similar result as recording in stereo, but it's just a different flavor. Now you need to make sure that whenever you're doing this, you are editing your guitars, because if you don't edit your guitars, it'll sound a lot less than professional. Now, while this whole video might be making it out that tracking in stereo is not ideal, that again, just depends on the kind of music that you're making. If you make acoustic music or folk or indie pop with strong guitar, then you should absolutely record in stereo because it does sound great. What I'm trying to get across is that you need to produce with intentionality and purpose. Why are you doing it the way you're doing? And make sure you are making good and informed recording decisions. If you like this video, then I think you'll love my take on how to record vocals in a home studio like a pro. You can watch that right here. We'll see you in the next one.